All right, welcome to our Getting Started with Adobe workshop. I'm Heather Lorenz. I'm the Senior Digital Media Trainer at the Journalism School and an Adobe Education Leader at the University of Kansas School of Journalism. And so we're just going to go over some of the basics of tools and ways you can get started with Adobe, all of that. So first of all, let's start with licensing and cost. Now, typically, licensing exists as either shared device or individual licensing. So shared device licensing would be the type of licenses you use when you check out laptops from the journalism school or use the desktops in the resource center. And all of those shared device licenses only work on Jayhawk Wi-Fi. Then there's individual licenses. Individual licenses have a cost attached to them. Users sign up for those on a paid monthly basis, starting for a student teacher discount at $20. Then after the first year, that goes up a bit. You can cancel those at any time. Currently, Adobe is offering some free sources to you. So if you go to the remote.ku.edu/Adobe, you're going to be able to read about the Adobe Creative Cloud access. Basically, what you would do is visit Creative Cloud, use your school credentials, so that at ku.edu to sign on. If at some point you had a personal account, you would want to make sure that you used the school account for this. From there, you can go ahead and download specific apps or download the entire Creative Cloud. And so that will take you to this link. So like I mentioned, as soon as you download one app, what it's going to do is install the Creative Cloud desktop app. And that desktop app is going to be kind of your home for all things Creative Cloud. So at the top of your top bar on your Mac, you're going to see a Creative Cloud icon. And when you click that Creative Cloud icon, you'll see the full app. So let's go through the full app and kind of look at all the different things you can do with that. So I'm going to begin by showing you my account. So with my account, I can hop on, look at what account I'm paying for Adobe. I can sign out. I can take a look at what my cloud storage is. So with Adobe, you get specific amount of storage. So I have a 100 gigabyte storage through Adobe. That includes a local sync folder, so that's on my local device, and also online. This means that as part of my licensing for that individual license, I can be on two different devices. This would allow me to access my files anywhere, anytime, and automatically sync them. Works a lot like syncing with your Google Drive if you've used that. I can also receive notifications of people that I follow with Adobe and other messages. Look at all the fonts that I have synced. So as part of your Creative Cloud account, you have access to the Adobe font kits. And this syncs and loads at all times. You can go in and manage your counts through the online and have access to those. Finally, you can look at how you want to access your Creative Cloud. Do you want to launch that at login? Always keep it up to date. I like both of these because it always keeps it going on my desktop. Next, as we continue across this, I have what's called My Work. And there's two sections to My Work. The first is those cloud documents, things that have been shared with me, things I've deleted, that part of that 100 gigs that I have. Then I have my libraries. So libraries are assets that are accessible in the entire Adobe suite. I can share these assets with other people. So if you're working on group projects, sharing libraries is a great way to access that. For example, this JTech branding, I've shared with students who work with me with J School Tech, doing our social media and other workshops. So they have all of our assets, all of our different styles and things we use, including some of our motion graphic templates. Any project I'm working on will typically get a library that I can use from Photoshop to InDesign throughout the entire suite. And finally, you have your apps. And apps are where all the things start to happen. So you have three different types of apps. You have your desktop apps, your mobile apps, and your web apps. Along the left-hand side, you can separate those into different categories. And this is really handy if you're brand new to Adobe to kind of give you an idea of which apps fit into which set. So we have video and motion. Just going to point out beta apps. So beta apps, if you really like an app and you're like, well, gosh, I wonder what they're going to release next. Beta apps give you a chance to play inside those yet released applications. Then you have a link to Adobe Stock, the Adobe fonts I mentioned, and some tutorials and things that we'll talk about later. So let's go up and look at all of our apps and get started here. So as you look at this, you'll notice that I have a quick link to go ahead and open that app, or I can update an app. So if I'm not sure if an app needs updated, I will get a notification that says, oh, you have this many apps to update them, and I can just click that to update. I can also click these three dots, and these are more actions. So if I want to look at other versions, or if I want to uninstall a current version, I can do that. And so if we look through all of these apps, I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what you use each one for, as well as what are important in the School of Journalism and kind of where you should begin your Adobe creative learning. So first we have Photoshop. Photoshop allows pixel-based editing. You can also do painting in Photoshop. You can do some simple logo design in Photoshop. But Photoshop is mainly known for compositing photos, editing images. Next is Illustrator. And Illustrator is not a pixel-based, it's a vector-based. So this is where you would create flat graphic icons and logos and some of those traces that you see out and about. Illustrator is actually related to InDesign, and the InDesign is also a vector-based program. InDesign is what you would use for what we used to call pagination, so layouts. So things that would have photos plus text plus graphics. Now you might be thinking, well, how are those two different? Illustrator is really kind of a source creation. So creating those illustrations, creating graphics. InDesign, in my opinion, works much better with fonts. So if you're going to be doing a full page layout, multi-page layouts, InDesign is the way to go. XD allows you to design and prototype both websites and apps. It is a user experience design program. And I think it is one of the critical things to learn in the Adobe suite. Now, one of the things that's great about learning, once you learn one of these tools, you'll be able to see the similarities in the next tool you get to learn. I'm going to pop up to Acrobat. So Acrobat is the PDF reader and editor. So you can create PDFs from InDesign, edit those in Acrobat, create forms that people can sign, automatically send back to you. Lightroom, and there's actually two different Lightrooms. So let's talk about the difference between this Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. And the key is if you look at these icons. So this Lightroom is cloud-based. This is the Lightroom I use the most because I can sync photo edits from my phone to my iPad to my desktop, all through this Lightroom app. Lightroom Classic is a desktop photo editor. So it just exists on the desktop. I can do many of the same things on both. So it's really a matter, do you want the cloud-based or not? Now, what's the difference between Lightroom and Photoshop? Lightroom is purely photo editing and correction. You can't do a lot of compositing. You can't create graphics in there. It's only photo-based. I also like Lightroom because if you're beginning to learn photo editing, it basically lets you correct in the order that you need to correct a photo. So it's very, very small learning curve in Lightroom. Next, you have your video suite here. So if I were starting learning video, I would probably start with Premiere Rush. And note that this is also a mobile device. So I can start a video on my phone and then immediately share it to social media, or I can pop it over to the desktop app and edit further. I can even take that Premiere Rush project, jump it over to Premiere Pro, and edit there. Premiere Pro is the Lamborghini, if you will, of video editing. So it has multi-track editing, advanced editing features. It is really the premier, if you will, video editor. Now, if I'm just getting started, I can still do multi-track editing in Premiere Rush. The interface is a little easier to use. It's a little simpler. I have fewer things I can do in Rush than Premiere, but it's still an excellent video editor. Finally, After Effects. So After Effects allows you to create the cool motion graphics, add visual effects. So if you want to create your own Game of Thrones intro, After Effects is the way to go with that. Going on down, Bridge allows you to centralize your assets. It is like an organizer for all of your files. We've talked about Lightroom. Character Animator allows you to animate different characters and drawings, and so it's an animation system. You can also use Animate for animations. This is specifically if you're going to do some character design. So think cartoons, gaming, that type of thing, where you would have characters that are speaking, talking. Animate might be used for characters, but might also just be used for shapes and objects. Although you can also animate in After Effects, and you can do some animation in Premiere Pro. Again, once you start learning one thing in the Adobe Suite, you can learn them all. Dimension allows you to take any type of design and put it in a 3D landscape. So let's say that you designed a logo for a chocolate bar in Illustrator. You could then put that on a 3D chocolate bar so you could actually see how that wrap and logo looked on the chocolate bar. Dreamweaver allows you to either use a design or a code side to actually design websites. This is different than XD, which just allows you to prototype. You're not actually creating the app or the website. You're just doing the prototype of it. So those are the key ones that you might want to look at in journalism. Even further going those down, I would say great place to get started would be with Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. One of the video ones. So maybe Premiere Rush if you've never done video. And then I would add another in. So adding in Lightroom, adding in something like XD. It really depends on if you're going into strategic communication or broadcast, you might do some different things. Let's look at those mobile tools, and I've referenced those before, but mobile tools are all the apps that are also available on phone or iPad. So a couple of them are linked to and very similar to the desktop apps. So for example, Photoshop A lot of the corrections, a lot of the composting techniques you would do in the desktop version, you can also do in the mobile version, in the iPad version of Photoshop. I mentioned Rush already as a mobile tool, but it allows you to immediately upload to, whether you're going to YouTube or TikTok, you can immediately get your videos in there. I'm also going to point out, if you are someone who likes artwork, maybe you come from a traditional art background, Fresco on the iPad is absolutely amazing for digital drawing. And then I'll also mention Spark. So the Spark suite allows you to create videos, pages, and social media posts super quickly. And next week, we're going to have a workshop on Spark Post. Next, you have your web base. And so I've mentioned the fonts and Adobe Stock before. I also want to mention the portfolio. So portfolio allows you to create a personalized website. You can even sync some of your Adobe assets automatically over to portfolio. So that's a great tool to start playing around as you build a portfolio. I'll also mention Adobe Color. This is where you can find color inspiration, look for certain color themes, and then download those to those libraries and use those throughout the Adobe suite. So no matter where you're going with your Adobe tools, whether it's desktop, mobile, or web, you have several different ways to be creative. So with all of that stuff, how do you get started learning? Well, one of the great ways to start learning is right here in your Creative Cloud app. You can click this tutorials link, and that's automatically going to jump you over to your Creative Cloud tutorials. You can do beginner or experienced. You can start searching by different topics. So let's say you want to get to know Photoshop. Click in. When you go into your tutorial, you will have sample files to practice with, and it will walk you through all of these tutorials to get to know the work area, get to know Photoshop. The next way to get to know Adobe is by going to Behance Live. So behance.net/live is Adobe's online portfolio and live learning site. And so you can see is that this one, there's someone who's editing live in Fresco right now, and you can check out the schedule. So sometimes they have just designers who are designing sometimes very specific things, and they also have daily creative challenges. And I think daily creative challenges are a great way to actually get a project going and get started on a tool. So this week there's Photoshop, Illustrator, and XD going every single day. And they give you starter files, and they're short little challenges. So you watch for 30 minutes, you get a chance to play. And that's a good way to start dipping into a program and getting started. You can actually sign up for all of these challenges, get notifications, and even view old challenges once you get going. So highly recommend those Behance challenges. The other challenges that are available are called creative jams. And there's a creative jam coming up this weekend for XD. And students can simply register for this. And the cool part about these is you get a little competition and you get some training to begin with. So it's kind of fun because it's a competition. You can have friends on a team, but you don't need experience. And when they announce the winners, you get to see how other people solve the problem. So it's a really fun, competitive way to learn. And finally, you have your journalism school tech. So J School Tech is my website. We have all sorts of tutorials that we have created and crafted for you, many of which are linked to journalism school classes. But we also have special events. So if you click our events tab, we offer all kinds of different activities you can do. So we have our teams, which are long-term. They go every semester, even summer session, we run teams. And students on the team decide what they're going to do. Sometimes it's project-based. Sometimes we have themes. So right now, the Monday team is doing Photoshop. The Friday team is doing InDesign. We have our creative breaks. So creative breaks are daily challenges I email out. And then we have some workshops. So those are all the different ways that you can get started in Adobe Creative Cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our share, and then those who are live with me can ask some questions. And if you are not live with us, feel free to just pop your questions down in the comments or ask them on our site. I think a great place to start with learning in Adobe is with Photoshop. Most students are familiar with taking photos on their camera, so importing those into Photoshop and beginning editing and working with those photos is a great place to start. Then I would look at InDesign. How can you bring those photos in and start creating a page design, a page layout? Then once you've learned the tools from those two, that's going to make learning Illustrator so much easier. So that's your next stop. Finally, I would dip into some editing of video, looking at Adobe Rush or Premiere Pro. If you are having trouble opening your KU Adobe account, begin by signing out of your current account. Then, when you go to log back in, instead of entering your full email address, simply enter ku.edu. That's going to automatically bump you to the single sign-on page, and then you will have access to the KU account with those free Adobe tools, and those are free until May 31st, 2020. If you are interested in building your Adobe skills, going beyond the basics, building your portfolio, getting more practice in, please contact me and we will work together to develop an individualized learning plan for you. And I can give you access to all kinds of different tutorials, resources, training, and practice projects to help you build those skills.